There's someone in your life who seems to exist on a different plane altogether. They're not at the party, they're in the study, lost in thought. They don't share their feelings freely, they analyze them in private, cataloging each emotion like a specimen in a lab. When you ask them what they're thinking, they hesitate, as if translating from a language only they understand. They're brilliant, insightful, observant, yet somehow unreachable. Welcome to the world of the Enneagram Type 5, the isolated genius. This is not a romanticized tale of misunderstood brilliance. This is an honest exploration of what it means to live life with one foot in reality and the other firmly planted in the fortress of your mind. It's the story of those who seek knowledge not for power or prestige, but as a lifeline, a way to make sense of a world that feels overwhelming, intrusive, and endlessly demanding. Carl Jung once observed that the more intelligent and self-aware a person is, the more they suffer from the general unconsciousness of society. For the Enneagram Type 5, this suffering is not abstract, it's visceral. It's the exhaustion of being in a world that constantly demands more energy, more connection, more participation than they feel they have to give. What makes a Type 5 retreat so deeply into their minds? Is it arrogance, fear, some innate disconnection from humanity? The answer is far more complex and heartbreaking than you might imagine. The Enneagram Type 5's journey often begins in childhood, in those formative moments when they first learned that the world takes more than it gives. Perhaps they had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, or perhaps they were simply overwhelmed by the intensity of others' needs. Whatever the cause, the message they internalized was clear: resources are scarce, and I am on my own. These children learned quickly that emotional engagement came at a cost they couldn't afford to pay. So they retreated inward, into the one place they could control, their minds. They discovered that knowledge could be a shield, that understanding could create distance, and that detachment could protect them from being drained dry by a demanding world. Friedrich Nietzsche, himself likely a Type 5, understood this profound loneliness. He wrote about the free spirit, those individuals who had broken free from conventional thinking but found themselves wandering in a wilderness of their own making. For the Type 5, this wilderness is both sanctuary and prison. Dr. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people reveals that approximately 20% of the population has a more sensitive nervous system, processing information more deeply and being more aware of subtleties. Many Type 5s fall into this category. Their brains literally work differently, noticing details others miss and processing experiences with an intensity that can feel overwhelming. But here's what makes the Type 5 phenomenon even more intriguing. Their withdrawal is not about superiority or disdain for others. It's about survival. In a world that feels like it's constantly reaching in to take something from them, their time, their energy, their privacy, withdrawal becomes a defense mechanism, a way to preserve the self. Picture this: you're a Type 5, and you wake up each morning with an invisible battery. This battery represents your energy, emotional, physical, cognitive. And unlike others who seem to recharge through social interaction, your battery only depletes when you engage with the world. Every conversation is a withdrawal. Every social obligation is a tax. Every unexpected phone call is an invasion. This is the scarcity mindset that defines the Type 5 experience. They operate from the belief that resources, both internal and external, are limited and must be conserved at all costs. Time, space, knowledge, emotional energy, all of these are hoarded and protected like precious commodities in a world that's always trying to take them away. Arthur Schopenhauer, the pessimistic philosopher who likely embodied many Type 5 traits, observed that most people are like hedgehogs trying to keep warm in winter. They huddle together for comfort, but if they get too close, they prick each other with their spines. The Type 5 is a hedgehog who has learned that closeness means getting hurt, so they keep their distance even when they're desperate for warmth. The Type 5's basic fear is being useless, helpless, or incapable. Their basic desire is to be competent and competent. This creates a relentless drive to understand, to analyze, to know, because knowledge is power, and power is the only protection against a world that might expose their inadequacy. They become observers rather than participants, watching people dance instead of dancing themselves, studying relationships instead of forming them, analyzing emotions instead of feeling them. This detachment allows them to conserve energy, but it also builds a wall between them and the very connections they secretly crave. Walk into a Type 5 sanctuary, their room, their office, their mind, and you'll find a carefully constructed fortress. Shelves lined with books they've read and books they plan to read. Notes scribbled on obscure topics. Research saved for later exploration. This is not just a hobby, it's a survival strategy. Type 5s hoard knowledge like others hoard wealth. They believe that if they just understand enough, if they just learn enough, they'll finally be safe. They'll be prepared for any question, any challenge, any threat. Knowledge becomes their armor, their weapon, and their identity. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, understood that humans can endure almost any suffering if they can find meaning in it. For the Type 5, meaning comes through understanding. They cannot simply exist, they must comprehend. But here's the paradox. The more knowledge they accumulate, the more aware they become of how much they don't know. The fortress they've built to protect themselves becomes a prison. Their intellectual pursuits, while deeply satisfying, also isolate them further from the messiness of human connection. The Type 5's communication style reflects this complexity. They speak in riddles, in references that only those with particular knowledge would understand. They wear specific items or drop obscure facts like secret codes, testing whether others can meet them at their level. This isn't pretension, it's protection. If you don't understand, you can't truly reach them. There's something ghostly about the way Type 5s move through the world. They're present, but not fully there, hovering at the edges of gatherings, observing from a safe distance, participating just enough to fulfill social obligations without actually engaging. Jung wrote extensively about the collective unconscious, that shared psychic space where humanity's deepest fears and desires reside. He believed most people live without ever truly encountering their own unconscious material. The Type 5, however, has made contact with this deeper realm, but instead of integrating it, they've intellectualized it. They feel emotions intensely, but those emotions are experienced as threats, wet, messy, unpredictable forces that could overwhelm their carefully maintained composure. So they detach, analyzing their feelings from a distance rather than allowing themselves to be engulfed by them. This Dr. Judith Orloff, who has extensively studied empaths and sensitive individuals, describes this as having porous emotional boundaries. Type 5s don't just observe emotions, they absorb them. They feel the anxiety of the stressed colleague, the sadness of the friend going through a divorce, the tension in a room that no one else seems to notice. But unlike other empaths who might reach out in compassion, the Type 5 retreats. They cannot afford to take on others' emotional burdens when they're already struggling to manage their own. So they pull back, minimize their presence, and protect their limited emotional resources. This creates a vicious cycle. The less they engage with others, the harder it becomes to connect. Their muscles for emotional intimacy atrophy from disuse. They rely even more on their cognitive abilities to understand people, learning and observing from a detached place rather than risking genuine vulnerability. In Enneagram theory, each type has a core passion, a compulsive emotional pattern that drives behavior. For Type 5, that passion is avarice. But this isn't greed in the traditional sense. It's not about wanting more money or possessions. It's about hoarding time, space, knowledge, and energy, because they fear that if they give these things away, they'll be left empty. The Type 5 experiences a profound fear of depletion. Every request feels like an invasion. Every obligation feels like theft. Every relationship feels like it's asking for more than they can give. So they withdraw into their castle, limiting their needs and desires to an absolute minimum. This minimalism extends to every area of life. They live simply, not out of asceticism, but out of a belief that wanting less means needing less from the world. They become self-sufficient to an extreme, preferring to figure things out on their own rather than ask for help, because asking for help means owing something, and owing means vulnerability. The irony is devastating. In their attempt to protect themselves from depletion, they deplete themselves. By refusing to engage with life's fullness, its messiness, its demands, its unpredictability, they create the very emptiness they fear. But here's where the Type 5 story takes a turn toward hope. Because within the Enneagram framework, each type has a path to integration, a direction of growth that allows them to access their highest potential. For Type 5s, growth happens when they move toward the healthy qualities of Type 8, becoming more confident, decisive, and engaged with the physical world. They learn that they have more energy than they believed, that engagement doesn't always lead to depletion, and that their presence in the world has value beyond their intellectual contributions. The virtue that Type 5s must cultivate is non-attachment, not in the sense of detachment, but in the Buddhist sense of trusting the flow of life. They must learn that the universe will provide what they need, that they don't have to hoard and protect, that they can give freely without being emptied. Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk and writer, noted that love is our true destiny, and that we do not find the meaning of life by ourselves alone. For the Type 5, this is perhaps the most challenging lesson, that true knowledge comes not just from books and analysis, but from the lived experience of connection. The healthiest Type 5s become visionary pioneers, individuals who can take their profound insights and share them with the world. Think of Albert Einstein, whose isolated genius revolutionized physics, or Georgia O'Keeffe, whose detached observation of the natural world created timeless art, or Jane Goodall, who combined intellectual rigor with genuine connection to transform our understanding of primates. These individuals didn't abandon their Type 5 nature, they integrated it. They maintained their need for solitude and depth while also engaging meaningfully with the world. They learned that their knowledge has value precisely when it's shared, that their observations matter when they contribute to collective understanding. If you recognize yourself in this description, Know this: your need for space is not a flaw. Your intensity of thought is not a burden. Your preference for solitude is not antisocial. You are not too much, too strange, or too different. You are exactly as you should be. But also know this: you have more to offer the world than your knowledge. Your presence matters. Your vulnerability, when you choose to share it, is a gift. The connections you fear will deplete you might actually replenish you, if you allow them to. The world needs your deep thinking, your careful analysis, your ability to see patterns others miss. But it also needs you to step out of your fortress occasionally, to risk the messiness of human connection, to trust that you won't be emptied by engaging with life. You are not alone in this. Scattered across the world are others like you, also observing, also analyzing, also seeking refuge in understanding. Some you will find, others will find you. Trust that your authenticity is a beacon. The chessboard is waiting. The game is yours to play. Step forward, not away. Your transformation awaits.